What about this friend who you lost through cancer? What happened?
My best friend, Anthony, you would have loved him. He was, he moved in next door to me when I was 9. I read about him a lot in my book, In the Art of Asking. And he was really, really sick during the writing and the publishing of the book. And he, I grew up in this sort of very sweet, straight, suburban Massachusetts. My parents were really nice. They read the New Yorker. They ordered all of their clothes from LL Bean. My stepdad was a physicist. My mom was a computer programmer. We had a nice house. Everything was it was sweet and straight. And my childhood, even though, my parents had split when I was really young, and that's its own story. But I had this missing hole. And Anthony moved in next door when I was 9, scripted. He just showed up, and he was my friend and mentor from the moment I laid eyes on him. And he and his wife hadn't had children, so he sort of adopted me, and I adopted him as my mentor, father figure. And he taught me everything in my teen years about mindfulness, meditation, yoga. And he was a professional therapist. So he was kind of in a roundabout way. It's like I had my own personal therapist living next door who taught me things and told me about things that none of the other adults in my community were talking about. Anthony was just a different planet. And I moved to planet Anthony. Much to the consternation of my parents, and the community also thought it was very fucking weird that this 35-year-old guy was hanging out with this 15-year-old girl, and there must be something wrong with that. And so we were, our whole relationship was sort of deemed inappropriate. But we were, in a very strange way, we were best friends from the time I was in my mid-teens until the time he died when I was 7 months pregnant. And since he didn't have kids, when he got sick with cancer and it wound up being a 4-year battle, I just moved back to Boston with Neil and held vigil and took him to chemo. And a lot of my life story is now entangled with that because he got sick right before my massive Kickstarter campaign. So a lot of my life was a juggle between doing that tour, but also canceling legs of that tour, so that I could go home and be with him because he was just about to die. Oh, no, he's not going to die. Is he going to die? No, I'll rebook my tour. No, and now I have to cancel this tour. So my professional life was really, really a mess for a while because of wanting to be there to take care of him and also wanting to make sure that I did not miss it when he left. And Neil and I were in London when I was 7 months pregnant. And we were staying in an Airbnb in London when I got the phone call saying, you need to come home right now. And I was like, I think I can probably make it home by Saturday. And my friend Nicholas was like, oh, no. Now, get on a plane. And I remember being with Neil and getting in a black cab and like in the movies, going to Heathrow and going, is there a plane to Boston? And getting on it and getting there just in time to hold on to him while he died. And it was really amazing because they teach you all these things about death, that it's scary, that it's gross, that it's abhorrent. And I found it such a beautiful experience to be with him and to then be with his beautiful dead body. And also, I was hugely pregnant at the time. I was 7 months pregnant. So it was holding him while he died. And I don't really believe in reincarnation. But I was like, if it existed.
It's a golden opportunity.
Oh my God, so. Just
right down the navel.
But it was a really gorgeous experience. And I remember thinking wow, why, and his body hung around for about a day before we made the call and said, okay, come over with the bag and take him to wherever he's headed. And he got cremated. But I just, we're so bad at this stuff. We're so bad at death. We're so bad at birth. We're so bad at miscarriage and these sort of these dark, scary things that, are hopefully going to happen over there in a hospital, and we won't have to look at it, and we won't have to deal with it, and we won't have to make space for this whole person who's going through this whole experience. And when you start having more of these experiences and you start unpicking it, and you see how bad we are as a society at just taking care of each other, taking care of our babies, taking care of our dying people, taking care of each other. We're just terrible at it.
What things did you encounter after Anthony died that you didn't anticipate, even though you had the prelude of a long period of potential death? What are the things that kicked in?
That's such a good question. I think one of the things that didn't occur to me until he was physically gone, and this is, I've lost a lot of people in my life, but this is the first time a big death had, that someone I really, really was close to all my life and considered my, he was really like my closest person, my closest friend. And I remember clocking at some point, like maybe in the weeks after he died. And go with me for a second here, because it's going to sound really simple, but to me, it was really profound. That his life was finite, and that anything he was going to do, he had done. That his story was now turned off. And that everyone's life is going to be like that. That like you're going to run around, you're going to do all these things, you're going to do a podcast, you're going to eat a watermelon, you're going to do all of these activities. And then when it ends, those are all the things you will have done. And that your story, like the book is closed. And whether it's 7 pages or 7,000 pages, it doesn't really matter. Like this is like, here you go. This is what you did. And I just remember thinking that one day and being like, oh my God, like he's never going to do anything again. He's never going to eat pasta again. He's never going to have a cup of coffee. He's never going to go on a walk with Laura. He's never going to have another phone call with me. Like he did everything he's going to do. And now when we think of the story of his life, it's just going to be the collection of those things. And I know that sounds really fucking basic, but it sort of hit me one day like a ton of bricks that his story is now a story. Like the story of his life is now told, or will be told by me here, by his wife, by his brother, by his millions of patients, by whoever he affected. And it also, Neil and I talk about this a lot, and he was talking about this the other night when he did a chat at the literary festival, that we forget how under everything, under all of the insanity, under all of the technology, under all of the ego, like that the stories are what we have as human beings. Like as human beings who have been around for tens of thousands of years, who need to pass important information back and forth, that we have figured out this way of doing it that's really essential, and it's storytelling. Like, I'm going to take this important information that you really need to fucking know, and I'm going to pack it in something that you can digest and remember, and I'm going to give it to you. It's a story, so you can hang on to it. And especially being here, like on this stolen land where, these folks, the native inhabitants of this land that they still really should own because they haven't ceded sovereignty, their stories go back more generations than we can even really hold in our head. Like there are people passing down stories now to a 2000th generation member of their tribe. Like, don't go over there. This isn't okay. This is what will keep you safe. Don't do it that way. These are, you know, and this loops back to the thing about Anthony, because once someone is gone, that's what they become. They kind of become the story of a person who once lived. They're not around anymore. They're only around, you know, I forget who was, there's this beautiful quote that like, you have a couple of deaths. You know, the first death is when your body discorporates, and then the second death is the last time someone speaks your name, ever.
Them stories, them indigenous stories, I feel like relate to the disconnection and dislocation that we experience around, say, birth, miscarriage, death, life, this inability to function. And I think a lot about the false markers of technological and medical advancement, which sort of create this idea of a utopia and the myth of progressivism, when in fact there is this sort of parallel universe held in archetypes and symbols, neglected, like the idea of stories that have wound their way through 2,000 generations, and that are sort of here at this time of where people are suffering from mental depression and we're experiencing ecological breakdown and inequality. And you can bet your life that those stories are about how, you know, don't go over there, don't do that, this is what we do, we don't do that, we've lost our harmony. You know, all those events you've described are this sort of nexus, apexes and nadir of nature, the low points and the high points, the inevitable points of nature, which we've sort of cocooned ourselves and excluded ourselves from, not through any kind of choice, but through this sort of inertia of apparent progress, finding ourselves lost and dislocated. And it's only when those moments come where you sort of, you know, make a decision to take control over your own life and body, or someone just dies and that's that now, you know, that you're confronted with, oh fuck, this isn't reality. This isn't the reality. I've been adrift. And I feel like what you're talking about a lot with your performance, Amanda, is that you're creating spaces where you pull people into here. We're here. And I think that's the only place that change can come from, is when you generate and create that kind of crucible of like, right, we're actually here, we're awake, we could do stuff differently now in this moment.